the Metaverse and Gambling.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not the first session. We've just moved our session forward, so Dion very graciously and Aideen decided to accommodate this. Thank you very much. Everybody, yes, lower the mic for me. I've been in the gambling industry since roughly 1995, and I've seen many changes over the years, not least, obviously, the rise of internet betting. And we're now on the forefront of, the next generation, if you like. The gambling industry is quite a strange one, really, given it is basically, at its heart and at its core, a very innovative industry. But it's a very glacial industry in some respects, because when I was in Ladbrokes in 1995, I was still, amongst board members who didn't think that telephone betting was ever going to catch on, and we were on the cusp of, mobile betting becoming the norm. And likewise, it took a long time to persuade people that internet betting was going to take off. And we're almost at that next phase now of where we are looking at a more immersive metaverse. And the question immediately arises, and again, there are very cynical boards that are out there thinking that there is not going to be a massive crossover with the gambling industry as opposed to where it has been heavily adopted already, which is the games industry. So just in terms of setting the scene, Dion, and obviously as someone who has developed his own technology platform, could you like to set the scene and say, lots of people have their own idea of what the metaverse actually is, but could you set the scene and tell me what you think it means, and likewise, what you think the commercial impediments are in terms of getting widespread adoption?
Well, thanks for that, Hillary. I've been in this space now since, without giving my age away, since 2008, and that was when my interests with Second Life, this concept of when you think of metaverse, you have to go way back. And the question I used to raise is, how do you create a link between the physical and virtual space? And that's really important, and that is what the fundamental is under the metaverse, is how do I take my mundane life of being here on the planet, and how can I transfuse myself into this digital world? It's always been something that has captured the minds, whether we replicate ourselves as a cartoon, and we see back in the day where famous stars used to do that. We want to be actors in our own story. And the metaverse allows that to happen. But here's this concept. This has been around for, like I said, 25, 30 years. It's just come into people's recent consciousness with what Facebook did by Meta and Metaverse. And when I've spoken to many investors that are moving into the space, and you listen to them, and I ask the question, do you actually know what the metaverse is? Do you actually know how the metaverse makes money? And it's very interesting.
Actually, can I just interrupt there a second? It's really, really interesting, because there was metaverse is being quoted in annual reports, in interim reports, and it is now, if you don't have the metaverse mentioned somewhere in your corporate thing, whether or not you know what it means. Most people still don't.
Exactly.
But it's getting its own place in these, because people are recognizing the importance of what it will become, even though they don't yet know.
Yeah.
It takes experts like yourself to know what it will be.
Well,
Do you think that's true?
It's true. It's like I said, I was in New York at an investor conference, and you would be shocked with the number of people who actually don't know what it is.
Yeah.
They think it's going to be, you got the big tech companies that are claiming, i.e. Facebook, I'm going to use that one, and that move he tried to do to try to claim something. Metaverse is not one company. Metaverse is made up of thousands of individual products, systems.
Because there's no one metaverse.
No.
It's like there isn't going to be a single metaverse, and by default, having one metaverse flies in the face of the fact that it is decentralized.
Yes.
So having a company doesn't make sense. Having one company like Facebook running what is essentially a network that is owned and run by its participants just doesn't make sense.
The fundamental thing when you look at metaverse, a lot of people are talking about venture capital. And this is what, I was at a venture capital event. But yet, if you go into the metaverse is not about the venture capital. The metaverse is about social capital and community capital. What do I mean by that? If you don't have users, you have nothing. If you don't have a community, you have nothing. So the focus should be on what is the social capital? 6 degrees of separation. I have one person and they're going to tell 6 people. That's the multiplication model that Facebook used when it started in universities, right? So the metaverse is that. You have to look at how can I provide the type of services that will capture me as a citizen of whatever that environment is, whatever that company's product is. And that is how you develop that. And also, don't forget, people want to be actors in their own story. By me being an avatar, I am transferring myself into this digital representation of me in an environment. And
But from gambling, though, it's like,
Yeah.
because I just think that's a problematic thing. And I think, Hillary, from a regulation perspective, if you have an avatar that does not represent anything about you, it's misleading to regulators. It's like, at least when you're, registering an account, you are who you are. Whereas I could be Dion, and Dion could be me.
I think there are technology tools that can be deployed to overcome the issues around anonymised participation. But just interesting in terms of you picking up. I mean, again, conceptually talking about this, I'm interested to focus on the adoption point. Because we've all seen Avatar, we've all seen Ready Player One, etc. Mm-hmm. What Dion has managed to develop is something that is more sophisticated and doesn't rely on things like VR glasses. So, and that for me is one of the big impediments of people like my generation even ever bothering with the metaverse.
Yeah, even you take VR glasses from a sports betting point of view. If you have a VR glass and you have to put it down, take up your mobile, place your bet. Put that down, take up. It's just not an attractive situation.
Yeah, and you never want that friction in terms of encouraging people to gamble. But just to that point, Dion, can you talk about the technology that you've managed to develop, whereby, like it's available on some gambling websites already, where you have a physical representation of yourself at the table, but more sophisticated than that, what Dion's managed to develop is camera technology, which will then allow you, even without anything strapped to you, to move your avatar within the web.
Well, the focus that we had, the first use case of our technology was we spent 4 years. We literally built a virtual island for the treatment of addiction.
Yeah.
Because in our research, we found that why can't we get on top of that? And I know that's a subject we're talking tomorrow, but it's really interesting that we looked at why can't we get on top of that? That's because we have demonized people for so long that I will not walk. If the addiction center was across the street in a building, I won't walk into it. The importance of that is because someone may see me and then it'll be all over the internet. Oh, I saw Dion go into the drug treatment center. But what if you can convert a person into an avatar? And once then put them inside of a safe space. So that was the beginning premise. So we literally built a virtual island that launches in the next 2 months. And the concept here is about self. It's me. The avatar is me. But one of the problems is identification in the metaverse. You are an avatar, and just like you said, I can hide behind that and registration and so forth. But because I said the metaverse is many different systems, and we have built our own system, and inside of that, when you come onto our platform, the system knows who you are. You can't hide in the registration. But I can be Dion, and as a real person, but and for instance, looking at addiction, my name is George. But why do we do that? That's because I can hide behind a mask for a little while until I begin to gain trust. Because it's no longer about what I look like, it's about what the words that are coming out my mouth.
I know, but to that point, then it also worries me that, if the social media has encouraged us to be nastier versions of ourselves, whether, it will, ramp up that kind of,
Well, we looked
behavioral, use and abuse.
Yeah, we looked at that inside of, we now have a patent pending on a technology we call Avatar DNA. And that is really important. With Avatar DNA, it's now biometrics that then links your avatar. So in the biometric process, KYC process we now have, we verify a person through, obviously, they take a photo, the photo's then put with their data, their passports, driver's license, and then that is biometrically checked. Once that happens and it comes back verified to us, we then take that same photo and with our avatar editor, we create that likeness from that data. So what we've discovered is a new asset class, because now the avatar is you.
Yes, but it's still about accountability, isn't it? Because there's been a lot spoken about sovereignty. You've used the expression quite a lot of taking back your own personal data, controlling your own personal data. The slight problem that we've got is, we've demonized people like Facebook and Google and, the big tech companies by this new democracy. In fact, what we're ending up doing is making no one accountable.
Yeah, I've said this quite a bit, is, when it comes to sports betting and gambling, the new technology, as fantastic as it is actually setting regulation back 10 or 15 years, because all that we have done in this industry to fight for responsible gaming, protecting vulnerable players, that's all gone by virtue of decentralization. And the smart contract between people, that is the bet, that's now the regulator.
If I am connected, I'm looking at Metaverse, if I am connected to my avatar and I'm verified to my avatar, what my avatar does is a direct relation to what I do sitting behind that mouse.
No, but what
So
I'm saying
I am that person.
We're talking about the Dion and Aideen avatars.
Yeah.
But I think, to that point, I think what you do is you control it like the games industry do, in the sense that, the terms and conditions of taking my odds and using my platform are X, Y, Z.
Yes.
So there is an element of control, I think, that the product provider will still have, even if you're talking about the technology that is actually the wager, is it within a smart contract. But it still doesn't, for that point, maybe in the gambling industry, we will have an accountable entity, which will be the operator, which will still be regulated, rather than possibly regulating every individual that chooses to play. But it possibly won't be the same for other industries and other uses of the metaverse, where it will be entirely private, with no one looking over the shoulders of the actions of the individuals participating.
Yeah, but the fear of that is there is no accountability, right? It's all about authenticity, isn't it? If you are determined to do harm, you want to hide, you want to not be known. But this is about being taking responsibility for oneself in the metaverse, just like I take responsibility for me in the physical space. There are certain constraints about me living within my community and all of those around that I have a responsibility. That is just reflected into the metaverse, where I'm still responsible. I still have to go by a certain set of rules.
Well, you're a good person.
But it's not just that, Dion. It's the depth of the pockets that the average troll will have, which is not very much. Which is why we happily, plant everything on Facebook, plant everything on Google, to say, well, there are deep pockets. They don't want class actions. They want to be responsible citizens, but not everyone will behave in that way, as you say, Aideen. Yeah,
because I think as well, as it's like the data is there, and part of me just thinks it's like, yes, we own our personal data and it's proprietary, but there's always going to be a path of least resistance for somebody who wants to take it. And at that moment, right now, that's regulated.
Yeah.
But, we're running the risk of that, the baddies, taking the data, because somebody will.
But it's not just necessarily taking the data. We were talking earlier on about the fact that ownership. You've spoken, I said, a lot about sovereignty, but there are so many difficult legal issues that the metaverse give rise to, because it's not just necessarily issues around privacy and protection of data, but it's also intellectual property. Who owns the image of the avatar? Is it the creator, you, who's used sophisticated development tools, or is it the developer that gave you the tools with which to build your own avatar? There are performance issues, there are image right issues in terms of people hijacking.
One of the interesting things that happened when we started developing Avatar DNA, and it was a image rights law firm in the UK that actually brought it out when I explained it to him. And he used this simple example. Beyonce is in a studio with lights shining, and she's about to do a dance routine that they just choreographed. So they have a person over here with a camera looking at image rights. So she starts dancing. There's an image on the back wall. The person records the image on the back wall of Beyonce dancing. The question is, because it was electronically recorded, and when you start and look at sports stars and artists, the question is the copy of the image that was taken on screen part of image rights.
Because wasn't there somebody one time who got into trouble? There was an MMA fight, and he was live streaming. He was on Twitch, and he was live streaming, but had the MMA fight, which was pay-per-view, in the background. So his live stream was just kind of like, hey,
Behind
and
me.
pay-per-view. So which was prohibitively expensive for a lot of people. They got it for free, and he got into a lot of trouble for that, actually.
And with that example, one would assume that image rights would apply to the image, but what he said was no, because Beyonce was dancing in real time. The image on the back was in real time. So
But there are separate rights there, though, because then you've got choreography rights, and that's subject to copyright.
We're specifically talking about the image rights in reference to use. And what he was saying was, if you can verify that the avatar is the person, like Beyonce can verify that was done in real time, image rights didn't apply because it was Beyonce, even though it was the shadow. So that's the point. Image rights in relationship, especially to the avatar, if you can verify that it is you, then everything in reference to content that comes out is you, is your sovereign data. That's what I'm trying to say.
So isn't the next smart move for the Beyoncés of this world, for sports people, to start protecting their metaverse image?
Cristiano Ronaldo has just released NFTs, a series of NFTs called CR7. He released them via Binance. And so they're now already on the secondary market because they all sold out straight away. And then you have one of the poker players, whose name escapes me right now. He was one of the first to start selling NFTs of his own image. And they come with utilities. So, for example, the Cristiano Ronaldo CR7, they came with a signed shirt and not a meet and greet, but maybe a virtual hello. And they come with, depending on what they are, they come with some utilities with them. And so as long as you don't use the utilities, you can sell that on. And so it was the same with Phil Ivey was the poker player who did it. And it was the same thing. You got to meet him. He got to play a hand of poker with him. But then you got to use an avatar of Phil Ivey on your poker table. Now, is that not misleading to somebody who sees a photo of Phil Ivey, even though it's an NFT?
Yeah.
It is, but it's not an endorsement. So it just opens up another world of kind of, what ifs.
It's also, like we discussed or touched upon earlier, it's the privacy issue as well. If you are interacting, one to many in the metaverse, does that mean that your performance is up for grabs and you've published it to the world? And the second point is, what if it's just one-to-one? Is there an expectation the person you're interacting with will keep your exchange private in the same way as, a private telephone call? So there are issues in relation to boundaries of privacy, use of data. There are also jurisdictional issues as well, because, like the online gambling industry has taught us anything, it's fraught with difficulties in working out different standards of consumer protection, different standards of product, as well, in the sense of where is it regulated. And here, you have the jurisdictional nightmare because it's without jurisdiction. Yeah.
The DAOs, the Decentralized Autonomy Organization. They are the group, and they are in charge of themselves. So it's like, does the hunter become the poacher, and vice versa? If there isn't good ethics amongst the DAOs.
But I'm interested to touch upon another point, and of course it's up for any audience member if you want to ask any questions of our panel while they're here. But it's the monetization of it. Because there's a lot of jargon, and people quite often, certainly in my generation, don't understand what an NFT is. They don't understand what tokenization means. They didn't even understand what gamification meant for ages, in terms of I suppose the evolution of gambling games online. So to get this, you rightly alluded, Aideen, that people are using buzz expressions in the boardroom, like they bandy around crypto, metaverse, without understanding what really it means. But more importantly, until they can see a difference or a motivation from a revenue perspective, they're not going to have any curiosity beyond the tokenism of mentioning it, if you like. I mean, where do you see the big money drivers, both of you, in relation to use of the metaverse? Because obviously with gambling, it's very obvious, but maybe it's time for gambling companies to start thinking more laterally about different revenue generation in relation to gambling games.
Again, if you're looking at, I am recreating my life inside of an immersive space. I look at the things that I do in the real world, the things that I hold value to, whether that is a painting, whether that is my wallpaper, whether that's my couch, or whatever it is. The metaverse is only a recreation of our physical space. So, and that's been going on in games, like I said, since Second Life and beyond. So you have digital items. These are just new buzzwords that, you know, people needed to create new words. NFT, all of these things are digital items. And inside of a virtual world, it's all about microtransactions. Those small little things that, whether it's a coffee by Mocha Coffee that sits on my desk, or whether there's a painting on the wall or my carpet, and also in reference to being able to purchase things, it's all about microtransactions in the metaverse. Yeah, and
So who do you envisage, both of you, that will be the main sort of wallet suppliers, if you like, for the metaverse? Main payment service providers.
Well, it's
If you're not, assuming you're not going to just be trading in.
yeah, in crypto.
Yeah,
right now,
that's correct.
it's crypto, and crypto was built for microtransactions. That was the entire premise of its existence. I think in terms of payment processing, the issue with payment processors like Nuvei, SafeCharge, WorldPay, etc., and presumably M-Pesa and other mobile money outlets through here in Africa, is first of all there's the cost of processing microtransactions. If there's a transaction cost, per transaction, microtransaction costs might be prohibitively expensive. But also a lot of payment processors are licensed, and they can only operate in environments where there is sufficient AML and regulations. So by default, regardless of whether they do or don't want to, they can't right now.
But isn't that the purpose of a wallet, that you do actually reduce the friction of microtransactions? Because even if you're loading a small amount of money, and that amount of money goes to the gambler, that's one transaction. In other words, you're not paying per play. Mm-hmm. So, in terms of, I don't know whether you've seen, any providers, coming to the forefront in terms of offering that kind of service, because obviously there have been ones in the gamers world. Yes,
I mean, BetConstruct is one of the BetConstruct as a platform is one of the front running companies, I feel, and they've created their own coin. And so the MGA has regulated it. Curacao is changing their regulations now to allow for cryptocurrencies. Malta has changed. Isle of Man. So they're looking at it. But when you're asking the question about kind of where's the kind of the money going to come from, where's the use case going to come from? I mean, I think the use case can vary. I mean, there's a fantastic example, I think, of Hong Kong Airport has an entire replication of the airport in the metaverse that they use to see the effect, using AI and using the metaverse to see if we add another flight, what happens, what's the knock-on effect to check-in, what's the knock-on effect to to parking. So I think we can, Metaverse and Web3 has been used massively in health and meetings. You've seen this. Yeah. So I think, we're looking forward about 10 years, but we need to start now. It's not catching us by surprise the way the smartphone did.
No, but I think that an interesting point as well, maybe Dion, you can touch upon this, is that crypto is seen as utterly toxic by most gambling regulators. Yes. So what we've had to do in the gambling industry is almost hermetically seal our businesses. We've had to have those that are regulated, and that's one part of our business, and then we've had to go to, different jurisdictions, such as Curacao, in order to build up our experience of, new products.
I just want to highlight this one thing. Sometimes we can overcomplicate this. How have virtual worlds over all of the years managed to maintain themselves with their own internal currencies? If you go to World of Warcraft, all of these huge gaming platforms where they have millions and millions of users, they do interactions all the time on their own platforms. They buy items, they trade items, they move items. That is happening already inside of these environments. And they have their own internal systems to manage those microtransactions on these environments. They've been doing it for years.
I think, but to Aidine's point, that has to be regulated in some way at some juncture. In other words, not just contractual constructs around, service provider, platform provider, and consumer, but some overarching regulation.
Yeah, because I mean, my feel on it is like we're most people, and I think if you're, it's like you're starting to get ready now. You, Dion, and your technology, you are far ahead of the vast majority of people. But, when Steve Jobs stood up and said, and one more thing, and here's the iPhone, that caught everybody by surprise.
Yes.
We had no time to prepare, and we were just all scrambling. Whereas good companies, good jurisdictions are now saying, right, this is going to be the norm in 6, 8, 10 years. Let's start getting ready now.
Exactly. It's what you already know, preparing, because it's here to stay. It's one of those industries that's not going backwards. It's now moving forward, because most of our lives now are online. They're immersive spaces. There's not a person in here, starting from a child to where they are, that have not played a game, that have not immersed themselves in something. So it's not.
Oh, I know. It's like I was babysitting my 9-year-old niece, and my babysitting was downloading Roblox and handing her my phone. I was like, that's grand. I'm a brilliant babysitter.
It's here. It's how we embrace it for education, e-health, e-government, and they are moving to the metaverse. It's inevitable because our children are already there. They're already there. They're already working these things out, and this is where regulation and proper governance come in, because they have to be part of this. Just like when the internet started, nobody knew what that thing was.
No, but it's true that lawyers and regulators are only playing catch up, because of any cursory research that you do on the subject will take you instantly to numerous academic papers, but very, very few, legal oversights or regulatory approaches. We've got to wrap things up, and thank you very much to my amazing 2 panel members. But just before we do so, are there any questions from the audience?
So, Marshall McLuhan is a media theorist who famously said, "The medium is the message." And when I hear this discussion of the metaverse, I think it's fundamentally a new medium. So I guess my open question to all 3 of you, if metaverse is a new medium, what is the message? What does that provide the users that they can't get? You alluded to, this is my character, this is the face I put on. And I would just want to hear some feedback of what does that give the user that they can't have with their current identity? Is that multiple identities? Is that a heightened sense of self? And how does that, help this industry and promote this industry?
I'll give you one example. We're working on a major project in the United States with the Native American Indians. We're literally building a metaverse linking all 573 tribes together. What is it that they are looking for as a overall community, considering their history in the United States? You know what the overwhelming reason for doing this? Sovereignty. Being able to say that they own something and that they are a part, their citizens are a part of something that they can add to. You look at the history that's been taken from Native American Indians, absolutely rich history that is all over the world through other examples, but is its ownership. Because using game engine technologies, they can rewrite these histories. They can bring back the stories that are lost. It is all about individual ownership to data, being part of something larger than self. That's what the metaverse.
And I think as well, particularly from a sports gambling point of view, this is true P2P. I mean, this is true person to person. You have the Betfairs of this world and you have all the exchanges. This is the true definition of person to person. So if you look at the benefits of Betfair when it came out, you didn't have what's called the over round. So there was no bookie's margin on top. So you had better odds. Now you put this into an environment where, again, where I use the example, I'm betting with Dion. Not only do I not have, we can give each other our own odds, or we can give each other better odds. It's a bet that we control, that's not being told to us. So there's a benefit of sovereignty and of control, as well as from a sports betting perspective. This is by definition pure person to person betting. For good or for bad, that is what it is.
Thank you. There was one more question down here in the front row. Thank you.
Dion, you pretty much answered it with regards to the American Indians, because I wanted to bring it back to Africa. When we start talking about, let's say the metaverse and in generally the use of the internet, the use of payments, the use of, let's say, the mobile in general, that I think is far ahead in its use, than in many other continents. I actually think that the whole decentralization is going to, create a massive opportunity for Africa. The only thing that I see as a major issue is the fact that the metaverse is far ahead, and politically it's far behind. So how can you bring it
Sorry,
together?
what was that last bit again?
Politically, they're
Far
far
behind. Far behind.
So how can you bring that together? Sorry for any gentleman here in the room.
You can't right now. It's like it's a chasm right now. You can't. It will find its way, and that's why I think everybody is saying, right, it's up to 10 years. Right now the gap is too big, and there's a lack of understanding on both sides, and a fear of understanding on both sides. But time will fix that, as it has done every other technology that we're dealing with in the gambling industry.
It's about letting go. It's a fear of what we don't understand. Like you said, politically it's far behind it because you have the roles that politicians have to play with their citizens and so forth. And yet we've seen where technology has gone crazy, hence the regulation. But you're right, it's about time and education. People fear what they don't understand, so therefore if I fear it, I want to control it. But this is the thing that you can't because it's now out there. But it is about education. That's the biggest piece of that. And once you can deal with that education and fear, but also it's about community. If it is benefiting the community by which is being implied, then there is that relationship between the fact of a positive outcome from using that technology versus the fear of the negative, which is what we're talking about. Gambling is a particular focus, and there are a lot of concerns around that, KYC and other things. But the technology is there to verify people far more than it was several years back. And the technology is even getting more advanced, like I mentioned about our avatar DNA. Those things are there to help to identify people and being able to give access, like I said, to sovereignty, data ownership, and various other things. But it still has to be regulated. It's only a matter of time and education, that's all. But the tech is continually moving forward. It's our application and use of the tech, not the tech itself.
Thank you very much, Dion and Nadine. Give them a round of applause, please. Our wonderful panel. Thank you.